Welcome to Basics Podcast. Today's topic is a mental strength training tenet that we try to help our players with, and that is one of confidence. How to build confidence, maintain confidence, play in a confident manner. Some of the topics we're about to discuss, some of the bullet points, are based on a sports psychologist who's widely regarded as the top sports psychologist in the world, Dr. Bob Rotella. He works with a lot of the PGA players. He has a connection to the University of Virginia. He's well known. So Coach Erny's here, and we're excited to talk about this.
Yeah, this is something that every player wants to have. You know, confidence is something that is kind of hard to define sometimes for people. How do I get we get a lot of players come to us at Basics, and the parents say he just is lacking confidence, right? He's playing with his team, and he just doesn't seem like he's confident out there. So we see this come out a lot with players. Where does confidence come from? How can you build it? How can you develop it? Can you work on it? And there's a few kind of quotes here. I think our format today, right, is going to be like where we go down the line and just talk about a few very important, I guess, call them a tenet, call it a quote, little truism, and then we can kind of discuss it because there's a lot of real practical, real life examples of how these things are true.
Yeah, there are 9 separate comments here. Much of this is Coach Rotella, Bob Rotella. A lot of it is myself, Jim McGannon, working these issues in that we can communicate with the players. So let's just jump right into it. The first bullet point is this: confidence is knowing that if you play the game you are capable of, you will win or have a chance to win. This is really that last comment is important. Have a chance to win. We're talking about Coach Wooden's pyramid of success. The top block in the pyramid of success speaks to this. And the top block in the pyramid of success is, if you've done the best you are capable of doing, you will have won regardless of the outcome. That is what we're talking about. So do the very best you're capable of doing, and we're going to talk about skills here in a second, and you will have succeeded.
Yeah, I mean, if you will win or have a chance to win, and that's all that people, I guess, want. You know, winning and losing is discussed all the time as sort of the outcomes, and we're going to get more into how that's not always the ultimate outcome that you desire. But when you walk onto the court or onto the field, and you just feel like, okay, we have a chance, and if we do the things that we know we can do, we have a chance to win. As a coach of a team myself, and that's sort of what you want to instill in your players, is that every time you walk onto the court, you have a chance to win, or you will win if we do what we're capable of. And I think that's a one version of confidence that. And then we kind of get, as we get into this, we're going to get into some quotes that maybe what if you're a player who really, there's a really good chance you're not going to win, right? Or there's a really good chance that the competition you're playing is just that much better than you are at this given moment. There's still ways you can be confident in that experience, even though that's obviously not ideal. So as we get further in, we can kind of talk about those too.
Okay. Bullet point number 2. Confidence is being more comfortable as the game gets tighter. You see so many kids who withdraw or disappear as the game gets tighter. And then there are those players who love that limelight. They love that challenge, and they get after it. A lot of this, again, is related to the player's skill level. We'll talk about some numbers here in a second. But that's really that's a definition of confidence. As the game gets tighter, you feel as or more comfortable.
So from your perspective, because I coach tennis too, and so tennis is obviously, this applies to other sports. From your perspective, like what are the body language things, or the appearance when that game is on the line, or it's the last minute, and you see the players walk back onto the court, or where you can just tell that player's confident? Do you have, like, obviously someone who's been around the game for years? I mean, what are the little body language indicators, or even just like what should people try to give the appearance of in order to have that confidence?
Well, it comes from within. You know what player, it just comes from within. Good body language discussion would be just the way a player walks. Is the player communicating with his teammates?
Yeah, they keep talking, right?
Does he have that sort of stride of confidence, or is he more internalized? A lot of this stuff might, to the listeners, might seem esoteric and sort of out there in another world, like this doesn't apply to my 5th, 6th grade boy or daughter. We get that. This is advanced training. We have 100 players at the college level for a reason. This is not an accident. We teach these kids how to play confidently, and again, much of it goes back to the skill level.
I think it's important that quote, confidence is being more comfortable as the game gets tighter. Like, I'll just use tennis as an example. A lot of times people are nice and loose and relaxed at the beginning of matches because it's not like there's no pressure, at least in those moments at the beginning. There's nothing, the match has got a long time left. It's like the first quarter of a game, but it's like the fourth quarter of a basketball game, or it's coming down to match points in those tennis matches. And it's if you drastically change your emotions and your behavior because of because it's the tight part of the game, that typically isn't a good sign. Like, you want to be kind of have a great sense of even keel to your game. Try not to get too high when you're doing well. Try to get too low when you're not doing well. Try to stay somewhere in the middle. And if you can do that, when you're in those big tight moments, there's a tendency to be more consistent, right? To not do what someone would say, choke or whatever. But so we say, trying to get, don't let your highs be too high, don't let your lows be too low, and just try to just keep plugging along and doing what you can do to win or succeed.
Okay, the next bullet point is confidence is feeling like a winner, even if you're not the winner. This is one of my favorites because, again, it's wooden. If you've done the best you're capable of doing, you've succeeded regardless of the outcome. So players dwell on failure. A lot of their times they're impeded by, how the parents or the coaches judge them. The reality is, at least from basics perspective, all that really matters is how are you doing at the varsity level in high school. This is kind of the end game. Where are you when you're on that varsity level?
Right.
So much judgment is passed when these kids are in 5th grade and 6th grade and 7th grade, and it's difficult for these kids to feel confident when they, their off-season team that travels and plays in these leagues is 2-7. That's their record. Well, what the heck? It doesn't matter. The whole thing is meaningless. The next bullet point we're going to discuss is related to skills and the numeric application that basics brings to the equation. What is your number? How competitive are you? And there's a relationship to your confidence in that regard.
So you're feeling like a winner even if you're not the winner. Then you have to establish sort of goals that are beyond just the result, because sometimes you can't control the result. Sometimes you are in a situation where winning and losing is almost out of your control entirely. So you have to decide what constitutes success for our team. Hopefully it's winning. Like, that's obviously why we play games. We want to win. But sometimes it's, did we just play hard? Did we play smart? Did we play together? Those are the three things that we try to focus on a lot with our teams. Mm-hmm. Did we play hard? Did we play hard? Did we play smart? And did we play together? If we do those, whatever that means for us, playing hard could mean, did we get loose balls? Did we get deflections? Playing smart means, did we not turn the ball over? Did we execute our game plan in a sense and not let the game sort of come to us? Or did we kind of go after it and do what we wanted to do? And then we play together. Obviously, teamwork. Is that something that we feel like we succeeded at? If you can feel like you've done really well. I don't know if you want to. The Christian Leitner quote that you mentioned is sometimes.
Oh yeah, it's it's just fantastic. Anything I think Krzyzewski, Izzo, these are probably the two best college coaches over the past decade or so.
Right, and Leitner was one of the best college players of all time. Obviously, his pro career wasn't as prolific, but he had that great quote. Right?
So they asked him, "How come Duke wins so much?" And his comment was, "Well, sometimes a win is a loss, and sometimes a loss is a win." And for the people who are listening to this is why it's so important. If you like basketball, if you love the game, if you want to see your kids succeed, effort needs to be put into this. It's not just like, let's tee it up and send my kid into that league or this league. There's depth to it. There's nuance to this, right? So what does that mean? A win is a loss and a loss is a win. Well, you can win a game and actually as a team go backwards because we didn't play as a team,
right.
We didn't communicate properly, we were hard on one another. Yeah, we won because we might have had the better players, but we didn't achieve to the best of our ability. And sometimes a loss as a win is really valuable because you might have come together and actually communicated. Maybe the guy makes a last-second shot to beat you. Well, yeah, but you communicated better that game, you rebounded in a better manner, you executed the skills that you're being taught in practice. There just was a coming together despite the loss. So it's an important topic.
Yeah, for sure. The next one then is that we have here, and some of these are connected, but if you don't grow in confidence every year, your thinking and most likely your practice habits need adjustment. I know this is something that you've kind of written down over the years, that if every year as you develop, so let's say you have a fifth grade boy, and by the time he's a junior in high school, right? If confidence is still an issue, and it doesn't seem like it improves from year to year, or maybe you just look at your son from fifth grade to seventh grade, so there's only been a couple years difference, then the thinking of what means, how do we become confident, or how are we practicing to develop confidence skill-wise and also mental strength-wise? Like, what are our expectations as a player and or parent? Like, maybe that needs to shift, right? So that's what you were talking about.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's hard to cover in a podcast that we want to keep brief and move it along, but there's depth to this. If your kid really wants to compete and succeed, and those things, by the way, are different things. Everybody competes. Only a few literally win. There's a major difference. Then at basics, we measure the kid's development. So in terms of that comment, your thinking and most likely your practice habits need adjustment if your confidence isn't growing. Well, let's look at your skill level. From our perspective, looking at the one primary drill, which is the McGannon drill, what's your number? How many makes can you get in a minute? So we have a progression. Where are you from 5th to 6th grade, from 6th to 7th, 7th to 8th, 8th to 9th, and then 9th to 12th? Where are you? We know what average is, we know what above average is, we know what excellent is, and we know what the records are. So the vast majority of kids, even all the way through high school, are going to be in the average category. It's a fact. Players can't score near the rim using their weak hand or using their inside pivot. They're not creating enough space. They don't keep the ball up. Their conditioning isn't as where it needs to be. So one of the comments that we were talking about, I've never seen a kid with a high McGannon score who's not confident, right? You basically, the skills are going to precede your ability to compete. It's not the other way around. That's what drives me a little bit crazy, Coach. You've got these parents who say, let's compete, let's compete, let's compete. The fact of the matter is, it's a foregone conclusion what the outcome's going to be. If you can't score with your left hand or use your inside pivot, what the heck are you doing trying to compete? Anyway, that's why we have this podcast.
Well, and this kind of goes along with the idea of if your child's confidence has been an issue for a while, if a player's confidence is an issue, we have these very measurable things that can help determine, are you ready to compete? Can you compete at this level, or are you ready to compete? But also, it's like we need to. Players and parents and coaches all need to be honest. Confidence is sort of an honesty thing. Like there can be a disillusionment, or there can be sort of this idea of thinking you're better than you are if you've never actually been challenged to do so, or if you've been sort of living in a smaller bubble of an area where you're not really seeing, okay, there are a lot of, like, the competitive level at my level is different than what I'm seeing at my school. So the confidence, sometimes there can be overconfidence, and that can actually hinder development. Like, oh, we're doing fine. We don't need to really work. So it gets into that. So if you want to be confident, you have to be honest with yourself. And if you're honest with yourself, you that can help you develop that more sustainable self-confidence as you get older.
One of the solutions to this dilemma, and this is something that we promote, while we encourage players from the same school to attend and play, it doesn't matter to us. We don't care if we have 7 kids from 7 different schools. In fact, sometimes that's an advantage. Many times that is. There's no preconceived notion of who can play and who can't. Just throw it to Johnny because he's the best player on our team that we've been playing together since 3rd grade. That doesn't exist with basics.
Right.
You have a multiple skill set of kids in the gym, and we're going to teach these kids how to play with no notion that Johnny's the best player and give him the ball when it gets tight. We try to develop all the players equally.
And that's one of the things that we hear a lot of, and it's a nice thing, but it's also kind of sad when parents come up to us and say, "Oh, so and so, our kid's confidence is down," and then they come and they do some training, and it seems like it's up, right? It seems like they're just really liking the sport again. It happens all the time, and I think that's a big part of it is that you're not. The preconceived notions of who's better, who's not, and sort of the placing kids in certain spots and saying this is what you have to do. At these young, really tender ages, we think that it's important that a kid is well-rounded, not just in their skills, but in life as well, and that can help confidence in the long run too. So, what do you think? Which one of these you want to talk about next, Coach? I feel like we should.
Well, we're moving along. We talked about honesty.
Yep.
Always, thinking confidently should be no different than thinking honestly about your game. We think you can refer to the Mike and Drill numbers, and that'll just tell you whether you're being honest or not.
Well, this one right here, given 2 players of equal skills, the more confident player will win nearly all the time. So it's kind of like what puts a kid over the edge. If kids have pretty similar skills or pretty equal skills, that there is that X factor of the mental strength, right? Of the confidence in playing, knowing how to play under pressure, and then going along with that if you feel prepared, you are gonna. That's confidence, right? A lot of times a kid isn't confident because they just know they're lacking the skills. But what about when there are? I mean, how do you explain that when there's 2 equal kids are of equal skills? That the more confident player wins all the time. So when you're in a situation where you're very similar skill wise to your opponents, how do you kind of get that edge?
Well, quickly referring back to the mental strength training we offer is, in my opinion, state of the art, cutting edge. To comment back on what you just said, a lot of times a player's self-image, how he or she feels about themselves,
right,
is a telltale, right? So if your self-image is poor, you need to work on it as you would your physical fitness, seeking steady, gradual improvement. So when you have 2 players of equal, I bet you this applies to tennis, and I know it applies to golf. When you have 2 players of equal ability, the more confident player will win. Well, what's the defining point? How does the player think about themselves? How do they feel about themselves? Are they giving themselves a hard time? Are they saying, "You suck, what's the matter with you?" Or are they giving them themselves a difficult time, and that immediately reduces their capability and their ability to play in a competitive environment.
Right, where there's pressure. I mean,
yep.
And also if your self-image is a positive one, right? And we're not talking about being like overconfident, right? Or really thinking too highly of yourself. But if you just have a solid self-image and you're comfortable in your own skin, not only are you going to be confident, but it's also how you kind of treat others as well, and that's important.
Well, we're going to finish up here. We think that the sum of all this is that thorough preparation breeds confidence.
Right.
We were listening to that Alan Stein, what's Pure Sweat? Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Pure Sweat.
Talking about shooting skills and things like that, and all the time that you need to spend in the gym to be a confident shooter. Yeah.
So, the one of the biggest issues is the thorough preparation breeds confidence doesn't exist in many respects in youth sports. There's very little preparation. There's some preparation, but we call it the practice to game ratio.
Right.
What is the practice to game ratio? Right, with basics, it's 5-to-1, 6-to-1, 7-to-1 in terms of how often we practice versus how often we compete. So for the parents that are listening, the solution is, prepare.
Yeah.
Prepare way more than you compete, and that will breed confidence.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it comes down to as simple as that. Get in the gym, work on it, work on your game, whatever sport you're playing, and it'll be typically we see it all the time. Kids develop confidence as their skills develop.
Well, I've enjoyed this conversation. We have a lot more to talk about with regard to mental strength. And we hope to see your kids here soon. Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Jim.